Alright, CNT125, Chapter 8. Let's actually subnet a Class C network. We're going to take everything we've learned and apply it so far with a Class C network. What we want is a chart that shows us what is usable, what is not. So we have the IP addresses we can start using to apply to things like router ports, switches, servers, printers, IP phones, etc. That's what we want. And remember, the network addresses we can't use, the broadcast addresses we can't use. We want a chart that shows those, but also the usable IP addresses in the middle. All right, so let's take a Class C network. This Class C network says they need 6 subnets for various groups of users. So they have a 220.45.35.0 network. Here's the default subnet mask. Here's the default subnet mask in binary. We are going to borrow 3 bits because we know if we borrow 2 bits, it's only going to give us 4 subnets. We're going to borrow 3 bits, it's going to give us 8 subnets. So we will have 2 left over. It's kind of like cutting up pizza. Sometimes you have leftover pieces. That's just what happens. So we're going to have a subnet or 2 left over. But with 3 bits, we can create 8 subnets. Remember, 2 to the 3 gives us 8 subnets. Here's my 3 bits borrowed. With that, I now have 5 bits left for hosts. So 2 to the 5 is going to give me 32 addresses per subnet, of which 30 are usable. That would be a question we'd ask now. With these subnets, is this enough addresses per subnet? Is this enough addresses for the users that will be in that subnet? And maybe they're like, yeah, it's only going to be a couple devices in each subnet because there's some scanners and that kind of thing. Couple terminals for checking people out. That'll be enough. That'll be fine. But that would be the check we do right now. So if we're going to proceed, borrowing 3 bits, we're going to indicate that with our subnet mask, 224. This right here is 224 in decimal. The other thing we'll do is we'll update our CIDR block, /27. It was /24. Here was the /24. Right here. Here was the /24, 24 bits. We've borrowed 3 more, so we've added 3, so /27 is now our CIDR notation. All right, our planning is kind of out of the way. Let's now look at how we're going to get our subnets. Well, we're going to use a little shortcut here, a little, kind of a little tool that's going to help us make this a little easier. Since we're borrowing 3 bits, here's the 3 bits we're borrowing, we are going to pay attention to that 3rd bit that we borrowed. This is the 128 place. This is the 64 place. This over here is the 32 place. We're going to pay attention to that bit. We're going to call it the interesting bit for lack of a better term. That interesting bit, being in the 32 place, is going to give us a clue. It's going to help us with letting us know that my subnets are going to increase by a value of 32. So with that in mind, the next steps get a little easier. We are going to start by creating a chart that shows the network numbers over here, the broadcast numbers over here, and the usables in the middle. Well, to do the subnets, I'm going to start with 0 because that's our ranges are always going to start with 0. And I'm going to increment the subnets by a factor of 32 because, again, we've borrowed to the 32 place. The subnets are going to go up by a factor of 32. 32, 64, 96, 128, 160, 192, 224. If I add 32 to that, I'm going to get 256. And 256 is above the 255. 255 will be our last number. So there is my subnets. And if I count them up, we borrowed 3 bits to create 8 subnets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's my 8 subnets. Well, by subnets, if you remember from way back, we're taking the 0 to 255 and breaking it in equal pieces. Well, if this piece starts at 0 and this one starts at 32, this piece here has to end at 31. We're going to indicate that over here. These are going to be the broadcast addresses. So I'm going to say this first subnet is going to go from 0 to 31. This next one starts at 32. It's going to go to 63 because the next one starts at 64. This will go to 95 because the next one starts at 96, etc. The whole way up to 255. Okay, so there is my network numbers and my broadcast addresses. I'm putting those in first. What's going to be left now is the usables in the middle. To get my usables, I'm going to go one more than the network number, so 1. 32 goes to 33, 64 here, 65, 96, 97, one more. And then over here on the other end, we're going to go one less than the broadcast. So the broadcast is 31, the last user will here be 30. Broadcast over here 63, last user will be 62. Broadcast over here 95, last user will be here 94. So we're going to go one more than the network number and one less than broadcast, and that's going to give me my column of usable addresses in here in the middle. There is how we subnet a Class C. Okay, that's really all we need to do. And now we have a chart of network numbers that we can't use, broadcast numbers we can't use, but usables in the middle. And I put some labels here to remind you of that. We borrowed 3 bits to create 8 subnets. Here they are. Here's the 8 subnets. We said there's 5 bits left to give us 32 addresses per subnet. They're going up I should say each subnet has 32 numbers in. 0 to 31 is 32 numbers. And we also said that there would be 30 usable because we subtracted 2 from that. 32 minus 2 is 30. Here's my 30 usable numbers. 1 to 30 is 30 numbers. 33 to 62 is usable numbers. So all the planning we did before shows up in our chart now. That's why we did the planning. If I were to plug this into a subnet calculator, which they do exist, these are useful for checking your work. I'm going to put a little clause here. When you do certification exams, it's all coming from your brain. There's no calculators allowed. There's no applications allowed. There's no apps allowed. It's all coming from your brain. But when you go to do IT work for a living, there is subnet calculators out there. There's apps to help with this, to help you check your work. So I already know they exist. Some people like to try to tell me, I already know they exist. You can use them to check your work, but you need to be able to do this for, certification exams, etc. You'll need to do this for certification exams and understand all the concepts to be able to answer what they're going to ask you. So there is a SubnetClassC, and there would be a SubnetClassC calculation showing you the subnet numbers over here, the usable addresses in the middle, and the broadcasts over here. And you'll notice in our example, we were just focusing on the last octet because that's the easiest way to do it. But it's really, if we go back to the beginning, what we started here, it's really 220, 45, 35, and then we have the last octet. We were just using the last octet to save some work. So when I did the subnet calculator, it plugs in the whole thing for you. So this number right here, 220, 45, 35, 0 is a network number. .32 is a network number. .64 is a network number, and so forth. And the usables here, these would be the usable IP addresses. All right, so there is how you do a Class C.